The real monsters are in the mind of man, not in nature. William Golding in Lord of the Flies captures this dark essence. Throughout the darkest episodes in history, humanity shows a disturbing inclination toward cruelty. Often we are cold, selfish, and surprisingly cruel, even without gaining any benefit from it. John Stuart Mill once said that all that evil people need to achieve their goals is for good people to look on and do nothing. This passivity can be observed in various everyday situations where silence in the face of injustice ultimately transforms into a form of consent. An evident example is bullying in schools, where bystanders often choose not to act, allowing the violence to continue. The lack of intervention not only prolongs the victim's suffering, but also reinforces the idea that cruel behaviors are acceptable. Over time, this dynamic of indifference can extend to larger spheres, such as social conflicts and wars, where the dehumanization of others serves as justification for atrocious acts. But what leads ordinary people to cross this line and become accomplices of evil? Often it is due to social pressure, the normalization of violence, or the belief that their actions are justified in the name of a greater good. The concept of the banality of evil, introduced by philosopher Hannah Arendt, demonstrates how respectable individuals can become agents of cruelty under certain circumstances, often depersonalizing their victims and distancing themselves from the consequences of their actions. The transformation of a good person into someone who propagates evil does not happen suddenly. It is a gradual process, often linked to life experiences, trauma, and external influences. Recognizing this phenomenon is essential not only for understanding history, but also for building a future where we can act in defense of what is just, resisting the temptation to remain silent. When a great moral disaster occurs, it is only a small minority that commits the atrocity. However, this minority is almost always supported by the majority, who passively refuse to act. How many significant injustices occur simply because we choose to look away or remain silent? Tolstoy suggests that most of us have a clear sense of right and wrong most of the time. This happens because we do not spend our time resolving complex philosophical or ethical dilemmas. Instead, we live our lives guided by a common sense of morality. Although I am not sure if this is true, if it is, wouldn't it be a great disadvantage for the demons? According to Screwtape, the experienced demon in the book The Screwtape Letters, one of the most revealing analyses of everyday evil can be found in this work. The author depicts the advice of a demon on how to divert a man from God and goodness, leading him to vice and cruelty. Screwtape is responsible for pulling the patient away from virtue and God. He argues that although demons may struggle to convince a human that a particular moral argument is wrong, they can almost always make him feel that this argument is irrelevant. In one way or another, we are often drawn to ideas for their utility or value, more than for a logical reason to believe in them. For this reason, Screwtape advises his nephew Wormwood to instill in his victim's mind the idea that concerns about morality, God, or ethics are unreal and overly abstract to have practical significance. He asserts that under no circumstances should the patient reflect on what is right or wrong. Instead, he should focus on what is practical and immediate. If the patient begins to ponder ethical or theological questions, Wormwood should distract him, redirecting his attention to something trivial, such as what to eat for lunch or the worries of the day. The goal is to create a widespread apathy regarding everything related to values. A human being might even claim to have principles, but in practice, these principles are so distant from their actions that they seem non-existent. The reasoning behind this, like many of Screwtape's other strategies, is to ensure that the person never deeply adheres to an ethical position. In the end, they become a kind of moral nihilist without being aware of this stance. This disconnection is reflected in everyday behaviors where people distance themselves from their convictions in favor of pragmatism and convenience, delegitimizing their beliefs and thus contributing to a cycle of indifference that allows evil to persist. This process becomes even more dangerous in social and political contexts, where the normalization of unethical actions becomes an acceptable standard. When the majority refuses to question the injustices around them, these injustices become part of the landscape, camouflaged by the banality of everyday life. Resisting this apathy is crucial. We need to cultivate a critical awareness, not only regarding what is right or wrong, but also concerning the consequences of our actions and omissions. Only then can we begin to break the chain that transforms good people into accomplices of evil, fueling a vicious cycle of cruelty and indifference that permeates our society. According to Screwtape, this dynamic is quite simple, for at heart, we do not engage deeply with rigid value systems. From the beginning, I find this point interesting because at times it applies to me as well. Like most people, I like to see myself as someone with principles who generally strives to be as kind as possible. However, I can recall numerous situations where I was far less kind than I could have been, simply due to my emotional state. This reflection leads us to understand that kindness is not merely an ethical choice. Often, it is shaped by external and internal factors that can divert us from what we consider right. Emotions such as anger, frustration, or anxiety can distort our perception and lead us to act in ways contrary to our own principles. It is fascinating to note how, in moments of stress or pressure, we can justify behaviors that in calmer circumstances we would consider unacceptable. This internal battle between our intentions and our automatic reactions reflects the complexity of human nature. Moreover, contemporary society often bombards us with information and stimuli that can intensify this internal conflict. The constant comparison with others, exacerbated by social media, can generate insecurity and discouragement, causing us to act selfishly to protect our own image. Thus, even those who aspire to kindness and morality can, without realizing it, be swept along by this corrosive flow of emotions and expectations. It is essential, therefore, that we make a conscious effort to recognize these moments and reflect on our reactions. When faced with challenging situations, it is crucial to pause and ask ourselves, am I acting according to my principles, or am I just reacting impulsively? This self-awareness can be the key to avoiding complicity in indifference, allowing us to act with greater intention and empathy. Finally, we need to remember that kindness is not a linear path. It is a journey filled with detours and obstacles. Each of us has the capacity to learn and grow from our mistakes. The true measure of character may lie in the willingness to recognize our flaws and seek to correct our course when we stray from what we believe to be right. In this way, we can not only cultivate a deeper sense of morality in our lives, but also inspire those around us to do the same. Change begins with us, and by practicing kindness intentionally, we can resist the temptation of apathy that Screwtape so desires for us to embrace. Unbeknownst to us, we allow our values to seem less real or merely theoretical, like a luxury we can discard when reality presses us. Those who do not believe in God may not fear the flames of hell, but if they violate their own principles, they often find themselves tormented by their conscience more than they ever imagined, as they become something they no longer recognize. While Christianity generally emphasizes free will and the sovereignty of the human soul, Lewis dedicates a significant amount of his work to discussing the importance of a person's social circle and environment, which can capture their mind and condemn them to hell. One of Screwtape's first observations is that the patient spends time with his materialistic friend. Next, the demons ensure that the patient gets involved with a group of elite thinkers, people who consider themselves sophisticated. The man, naturally, wishes to impress these new friends and thus begins to repeat what they say. When they promote a morally repugnant stance, he simply agrees or tones down his position without clearly expressing himself. What Screwtape really seeks is for the patient to develop a kind of divided personality. He prays in church and sees himself as a good Christian, but during dinner with his new social circle, he despises those same principles. This duplicity is not uncommon and can happen to any of us. In an increasingly polarized society where opinions are often shaped by external pressures, this internal struggle can intensify. The desire for belonging and acceptance can lead people to compromise their beliefs, even if unconsciously. The result is a dilution of personal values, which become subservient to the need to fit into a group. This adaptation may seem harmless at first glance, but over time, it can erode the foundations of moral integrity. Moreover, this internal division creates a sense of disconnection. When we try to maintain two versions of ourselves, one that lives according to ethical principles and another that conforms to a group's expectations, we begin to lose our authenticity. This lack of congruence can be exhausting and ultimately lead to a state of dissatisfaction and anguish. What initially seemed like a way to please everyone can transform into a vicious cycle of painful self-discovery, where the internal struggle becomes unbearable. Therefore, it is essential that we strive to maintain our integrity even in the face of social pressures. We need to be able to take a stand and express our beliefs, even if it involves the risk of displeasing some. Authenticity is a fundamental value that should be cultivated and defended, as it is the foundation of a morally rich life. By doing so, we not only preserve ourselves but also encourage others to act similarly. In this way, we can create a social circle that values honesty and compassion, rather than one that fosters hypocrisy and indifference. In conclusion, C.S. Lewis warns us about the fragility of human morality and the ease with which we stray from the path of goodness through small, almost imperceptible daily cruelties. He reminds us that the true danger lies in our illusions and the way we use fantasy to convince ourselves that we are better than our actions reveal. The line between good and evil is not a distant abstraction. It manifests in the decisions and attitudes we adopt daily, shaping who we are. Lewis challenges us to confront this internal duality and to commit continuously to the good, not through grand heroic gestures or unreachable virtues, but through small, genuine acts of kindness that, when accumulated, have the power to transform both ourselves and the world around us. These acts, while they may seem insignificant at first glance, are the essence of true morality. By cultivating them, we create an environment conducive for others to feel inspired to act ethically and compassionately. Furthermore, awareness of our own flaws and the willingness to learn from them are fundamental to this process. Recognizing that we are all susceptible to the negative influence of our environment and social pressures is the first step toward reversing this trend. By becoming more authentic in our interactions and decisions, we can build a circle of trust and compassion that challenges the normalization of cruelty. The central message of Lewis is a call to action. He urges us to remain vigilant regarding our choices, not to let apathy or indifference define our lives. By cultivating kindness in our daily interactions, we not only nurture a sense of personal integrity, but also contribute to a culture that values empathy and compassion. In this way, we can resist the temptation of moral mediocrity and instead become agents of change in a world that often seems cynical and indifferent. Transformation begins within us, and each small act of kindness can lead to significant changes, becoming a powerful force against the darkness that threatens to consume us.